Welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast, where we bring gay men together through ritual, reflection, and renewal.
I'm Jerry.
And I'm John.
As Utah celebrates Pioneer Day, we're taking a different perspective on what it means to be a pioneer. Today, we're honoring the LGBTQ plus trailblazers whose courage, resilience, and authenticity helped shape the lives we live today.
We'll reflect on the history that brought us here, the people who inspired us personally, and how each of us has the opportunity to become a pioneer in our own way. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I'm Jerry.
And I'm John.
And we're coming to you pre-recorded but live as we record.
Yes.
In Salt Lake City, Utah.
That's where we are.
And we're excited. Summer is in the air. This particular episode is going to drop on July 24th.
That's right.
So what we've learned is we have a lot of listeners outside of Utah. So we have a holiday here in Utah on July 24th called Pioneer Day.
That's right.
It's where we celebrate how the Mormons came and colonized Utah, extinguishing and genocide of all the Native Americans so they could have religious freedom.
And that. So in 1847, Brigham Young and his trusty battalion, right, came across the lands on their buggies and carts and horses and whatnot, and they came across this desert land and settled here. And so it's Pioneer Day.
They actually think they discovered it.
Yeah.
But our Native brothers and sisters were here long before they showed up.
Long before that.
And so anyways, Pioneer Day is a celebration of the Mormon pioneers coming to the Salt Lake Valley.
Right.
Of course, it's a state holiday. Everything shuts down. We have a huge Days of 47 parade.
Yes.
That is the largest parade here in the state of Utah, followed by the Pride Parade.
Pride Parade, yay.
I was thinking about this, and it's going to be a gripe session a little bit, because the Days of 47, the parade, the whole scope of the holiday, right, they try to be inclusive. But if you go to the parade, basically all the different wards and stakes or church congregations here develop their floats and they celebrate their Mormon pioneer heritage. And then there's kind of like this token appreciation of other pioneers here in the state of Utah.
Oh.
Now, what's interesting is for years, the queer community has made application to be a part of the parade.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And they are repeatedly denied because they don't want the parade to be political. And they do have token other groups. Like we have this church, Calvary Baptist, that has a significant Black congregation, very evangelical, and they're invited. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Oh, really? That's it.
So there is some diversity in the white supremacy. Maybe we should record this over. I was working out and I was fussing about this. I thought, I like the concept, but I hate the holiday.
Let's get to the good part.
It's like Thanksgiving. We're celebrating how the Native Americans helped the settlers, and then we wipe them out. But have some turkey. Okay, it's out of my system. Should we start over?
You want to start over?
So anyways, we thought today's theme, being since it's going to air on Pioneer Day, is what would Pioneer Day mean? Like, pioneers are like the first wave of people who come into an environment and settle it and develop something from it.
Right.
Is that a fair definition?
Yeah, it's a really good definition. A pioneer, someone who kind of is the first to do something, to arrive somewhere, or to achieve something, to be the evolutionary, individual or group that starts something and people will then follow. I think that's kind of the big piece too, that then there's the following of that. And yeah, because it's Pioneer Day here and there's that particular celebration, but why not celebrate gay pioneers?
Exactly.
Gay pioneers, past, present, and future.
do you know one thing that I was thinking about this at the gym too? We shouldn't talk about topics before I work out because I get consumed. But one thing I've noticed, and I have a practice, Pride Counseling, here in Salt Lake City, and I see a lot of gay folks. And what's always interesting to me, especially if I'm working like with the 20-something generation, but it's not just isolated to that, is that most of these folks don't know or are even maybe curious about their own queer history. And sometimes I feel like I listen to some of the activists today, I'm like, oh, you think that's an original thought, right?
Right, yeah.
But in the, for the absence of not knowing our history, right, it is, to me, that's problematic. To me, part of pride is understanding where we come from, where we are, and what the future looks like.
Absolutely.
I'll give you a good example. You and I both grew up in the era of HIV, AIDS. We saw it start. We saw it become awful. And now we're even seeing the other side of antivirals and PrEP, which is interesting. I didn't think we would ever get there.
Yeah.
But if I talk to this younger generation about the HIV and AIDS part of our history, they almost look perplexed. Like they really don't know what we're talking about.
Wow. Do they just popped in my head. Do they say, was it like COVID?
No, but if I were to make a comparison, I remember being in high school. We were studying the diary of Anne Frank. And what came with that was an understanding of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at images of that. Everything was in black and white. And there was a part of my little juvenile brain that was kind of dismissive of that being in the history. Like that was distant past.
Right.
When in all reality, it wasn't that distant.
It wasn't that long ago, right.
But and maybe that was a particular defense mechanism in coping with learning about the Holocaust. But I often feel like when I talk to younger folks about HIV, AIDS, the pandemic associated with that, they look at me with that same look.
Yeah, because they just have no association with it. There's no personal relationship or attachment to it. So it does feel, I would guess, so distant and so apart from them,
right.
Just like the Holocaust would be for us, because we weren't a part of that history per se. But yeah, so it makes me think about, well, since we learned about the Holocaust and other things like that in our history books, how are young people today learning about, well, gay kids? How are they learning about their gay history?
Well, I think that's what concerns me, right? Is I think in many ways it feels like generations in our community are segregated, right? The younger group sticks to itself. They don't even consider aging, let alone that there are people who are aging in the community. There seems to be this isolation that is not disseminating information. And here in the state of Utah, where we've outlawed diversity, inclusion, and equality initiatives, now it's controversial just to even talk about the topic.
Right, so true.
In like educational platforms and that. So yeah, I think.
Wow.
I think people are getting. We've talked about this. Their education off of Grindr, their education off of porn. We're getting educated in really unhealthy ways, and consequently, in the absence of knowing our history, I think that keeps us. our voices, I think, become muted when we don't consider that we're riding on the back of our ancestors.
Not only do they become muted, they become less, I don't even know what the word to use, but because we have such a rich history and such a powerful, pre-existence, for lack of a better description, that muted voice also makes people feel like small and irrelevant as well, because they're not attached to anything, or they don't feel like they came from anything. And yeah, that's a major problem.
100 years ago, I was doing a presentation to a group of gays and lesbians, and I was promoting the idea that we were our own cultural identity. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is people in the audience really resisted that notion. And I thought, we have a history.
Yes.
We even have a language.
Absolutely.
Daddies, otters, are you family, friends of Dorothy, right? Yep. We have our own language, our own lingo. We certainly have our own way of interacting with each other. I have lots of close straight friends and I have close gay friends. And I can tell you that how I relate with my gay friends is very different than my straight friends.
Right.
So I think we lessen our power. Mm-hmm. The reason I bring up that cultural reference is part of strengthening our cultural identity is understanding the history that we come from. Right. So when we talk about HIV and AIDS, for instance, some of those activists who were unwillingly thrust into the limelight, but even those who stepped into it aggressively, they were like folk heroes of our time.
Right.
And yet a lot of people have, like Larry Kramer.
Yeah.
Even how Stonewall started is still an object of controversy, and that narrative keeps shifting and adapting. But if we talked about Marsha Johnson,
Marsha P. Johnson,
I wonder how many would know who that is.
People wouldn't know.
Yeah.
What's when we say names like that, even Marsha P. Johnson or Harvey Milk and folks like that, what comes to mind is I'm wondering how our people in general, but young people in particular, learning about these things and people, if they do. And it seems like we're relying on, at least I'm relying on, the media, like television and movies, even shows like RuPaul's Drag Race. They try to throw in some history. I mean, RuPaul is 65 years old, and so he definitely has a history and tries to teach the children, a little bit. But also, some of the movies that have come out in recent years, just about gay relationship, or gosh, what was that movie years ago? Philadelphia. It was about HIV. It was about AIDS.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, Tom Hanks was in that. So we almost have to rely on that faction to learn about things that are relevant in our history.
Yeah.
And then there's Pride. I don't know if we're getting the full, we're getting the celebration of Pride, but we're not getting the history of how this even started with, Stonewall and the people who pioneered this event that has continued to be part of our community all these years.
Do you know, at one point in the history of Pride counseling, I had a clinic, and we had a big office, probably 8 offices. And I decided to name the rooms off of gay historical people. Great idea. So I had a Hayes room for Harry Hayes and Harvey Milk.
Oh, wow.
And Marsha Johnson and Weewa, the Hopi native.
Oh, I love that.
And so one year for Pride, because I would set up a booth to let people know I existed, but I set up a display case and I had the historical people, and then under it I had like a paragraph of who they were. And that was probably the one year that my booth got a lot of lingering attention. People spent time looking at it. And I thought, but my first inclination is, well, people are hungry for their history.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Pioneer Day.
Yeah.
And we thought today's theme could be about how are we pioneers in our communities,
Yeah.
and who are the gay pioneers and who will be the gay pioneers.
Yeah.
I'm personally advocating that at some point we have a big ass queer float in the days of 47.
Yes.
I do think it's interesting that these white cisgendered conservative Mormons have decided that they've decided for us that our identity is more of a political platform than it is an actual identity. But I think if we had some strong advocates in our community, they could seriously lobby for some space in that parade.
I think so. My question to you is, thinking about just our past and how we just got here, who would you say are your gay pioneers? Who do you kind of look up to or have studied and feel like they've been major influences in your, in what you do and who you are?
Well, definitely, I would say a very powerful moment in my queer development was going to a radical fairy sanctuary in Wolf Creek, Oregon. And the first time I went there, I met Harry Hayes, who was like 86. He was quite elderly at that point. And studying his life, there's a couple of documentaries out there about his life. He was a very controversial person. Like he aligned himself with the Communist Party, right? But he did it on principle, like his sense of principles. We started the Mattachine Society.
Right.
He started bringing gay men together in the 40s and 50s when people didn't, I don't even think we had a name for gay, right? He started bringing people together, and he didn't do that by himself, but he certainly championed and moved that case. And then eventually in the 70s, he developed the Radical Fairies as a group of kind of like the early Mindfully Gay group, right? He wanted gay men to understand their unique gifts and abilities. And what inspired him was his interaction with Native people. So I would say Harry Hayes, historically, who's no longer with us, was the definite hero. And then somebody who's still alive that I look up to this day is my mentor, Clyde Hall.
Oh, there you go.
Who is lives in Fort Hall, Idaho, is Shoshone, and has spent a pretty significant part of his life mentoring and nurturing queer voices to find their connection to spiritual roots. And so just off the top of my head, those two stick out.
I love that because, one with Harry Hayes, it's someone who was kind of well known and did a lot of work. And the other is someone who was just kind of in your circle. Not many people may know Clyde unless they were in this circle. And which I think is a good point I think we need to really bring to light in this conversation is that there's some certainly well-known people. There might be some movie stars who in recent years who have come out. And people, I can see young people kind of looking up to those folks like, oh, they're gay, and they're well known. But then there's those kind of those unspoken heroes. It might be a school teacher that was gay that you knew about, and maybe they were a mentor to you or something like that. And they probably didn't get, world-renowned, recognition or anything, but they were very relevant in your life. And I certainly have that. When I do go to media, when I look at my heroes or mentors or the people who I feel like have paved the way for me. And one thing is I didn't see many people that look like me, on television or movies. And if I did see them and knew who they were, and they probably, well, how do I say this? They weren't out. Let's just say they weren't out. They didn't didn't come out until maybe later in time or even after they've passed away. And these are individuals like James Baldwin is actually one of my inspiring heroes, because I read many of his books and poetry, and I didn't know he was gay or bi, or even use any of those kind of those labels. But he was, I guess, known to be in the company of men. But I didn't know about that until much later. And then once I did know that, I think I gravitated more to that, to him and his history and his story and all of that. There's been talk about like Luther Vandross. He was a pop R&B singer of the 80s, right? And who passed away, I guess, in the early 90s. But no one knew his identity. I think it came out probably more as rumor later on. And so those are kind of the well-known people. But the people who really were rich in my life were actually priests. When I went to college, I went to a Catholic university, a Jesuit university, and it's considered quite liberal for a Catholic, institution. And there was a lot of gay priests, and there were that were, I wouldn't say that they were out, but they didn't really keep it a secret that they were gay, and that's when I really leaned in, because I grew up Catholic, and certainly having that information or knowledge, I'm using air quotes here, that homosexuality is a sin. I just kind of lived with that. And so, well, if that's a sin, then I must be a sin as well. But there were a couple of priests, one in particular, Father Pabst, and I can remember him, so saying to a group of freshmen, when the question came up about, so what does the church and God think about homosexuality? And his answer really was embedded in my brain. His answer was, well, the church teaches against homosexuality, and he kind of gave a few words about that. But he said, you know what? But for me personally, I believe God loves everyone, and that stuck with me so profoundly. And just knowing that here's this priest saying that God loves everyone no matter what, I felt seen. And so I really see him as a pioneer, kind of stepping out of the four walls of this Catholic institution to say truth, and he was also a gay man as well, and had the courage to even say that. So there's the unspoken or unknown heroes out there who are pioneers, and those who have paved the way, and people are more knowledgeable about them.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So we have right, there's people that stand out. Like we can look at them and say, "Wow, they paved a particular path." You talked about James Baldwin.
Yeah.
I wonder how many people realize that the civil rights movement of today, right? Martin Luther King gets a lot of credit, but his partner in that was Bayard Rustin, right?
Yes, that's right.
In fact, there's a documentary, I think, on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, yeah.
About Rustin's life. But it was interesting because even though he was integral in the movement, they really wanted his voice quieted because they felt like his sexual orientation was going to somehow dilute their message about racial equality.
And it's so fascinating because I didn't know his story until literally last year, because of that.
Oh, really?
Because of that Netflix documentary that came out.
Yeah.
Because I had no clue. And I felt it was interesting because I went through during COVID. I'll just a little tidbit here. Kind of went through a little identity crisis because I was learning so much more about my Black history, and like, how come I didn't know this? How come I didn't learn this? And some things, especially with anyway, all the things that were going on, I was learning more about Black history. And so I think the same things were happening about, gay history, and learning about this person who was part of the civil rights movement. Like, how come I did not know this? And I wonder if young people, other people are doing the same thing, learning about folks and saying out loud, how come I didn't know this? How am I just now learning this?
Well, I had a similar experience happen here in Utah. When so the state of Utah now has a law that bans conversion therapy for minors.
Right.
And the platform, the way that we worked that was a very long process. It took several years, but then the year that we initiated the legislation was a very concentrated, multi-month process of really figuring out how to make that work. But when it came to giving testimony to the committee, even though I was like the mental health lead, and I was kind of like the mental health expert on this issue, they decided collectively that I should not be the voice. And we had a therapist in the community who is a member of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and she was seen as much more credible than me.
Interesting.
Because they were more likely to listen to her.
Wow.
And I conceded to that. I mean, I kind of understood the wisdom to it. But it's interesting that whole process kind of went through, and, Equality Utah knew who was championing the issue, but the woman who ended up testifying may have spent, just comparatively speaking, she may have spent a half hour in that process, whereas I spent multiple years.
Yeah. Wow.
But they were right. I mean, if I would have gotten up and identified myself as a gay man, it wouldn't have worked. And it did work. But yeah, so it's interesting how these things play out. I think about, when was your first Pride here in Utah? Do you remember where we were meeting?
Well, I got here in 1994.
Yeah.
So I must have got my first, probably 95 was my first Pride here in Utah.
Was that at the Gallivan Center?
Where was it?
Well, I think about the early Pride, my first Pride was at the Gallivan Center. And those prides would draw a couple hundred people.
I can't remember.
But before that, I believe they started at the state fairgrounds. I think they moved to Liberty Park.
Yes.
But they started out as little picnics.
Yes, right.
And then it grew to the Gallivan Center.
Yeah, that's right. Right? I want to say it was the fairgrounds where the Pride I went to.
Oh, really?
It's hard to remember now. It's hard to remember. It's over 30 years ago.
If you drink your ginkgo biloba, you'll have your memory still. But the reason I bring that up is the prides before I started going in the 90s were, in my understanding, much more modest than they are today.
Yeah.
And I know when I first got involved, I would be marching in the parade, and we literally would have protesters everywhere. For every person participating and celebrating Pride, there were like 2 leather-bound Christians who were holding up signs saying fags are going to hell.
Right.
But it was semi-hostile, and you weren't quite sure how the Pride event was going to turn out. But I would say that everyone who showed up initially, right? Like, they paved the way for these massive celebrations we have today.
Very true.
They opened doors.
Very true.
They've literally created a national holiday. Most people see June as our month, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just before Agent Orange took over the country, in the month of June, banks and stores, everyone would have some kind of celebrating Pride kind of a thing. But I would say those people who showed up, who dared to, their protest was to simply live unapologetically, to show up and to celebrate. Not only were pioneers to the world, but they pioneered a path for us to follow.
Yeah.
And to participate.
Absolutely. Gosh, I think that is important to realize, even just in the 30 years or so plus that I've been here. Yeah, there has been this evolution of the Pride experience, the Pride celebration, and 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 being on the outside of it, kind of looking in. I mean, I don't know the particulars of how it evolved from the inside out, but I can only guess that there was probably just a handful of people. And where were they from? There wasn't a Pride Center, was there?
There was the Stonewall Center.
Oh, there was the Stonewall
Which
Center.
was scary.
It was kind of, yeah.
It was in this industrial area. You didn't really know what you were walking into. And it was a little intimidating.
So there's the Stonewall Center. There was the Utah AIDS Foundation, and they may have been involved. I don't know, but just to see it, move and shift, and I can even think, I can only imagine, because you see Pride celebrations and festivals and the parade usually towards the end of June because it's closer to the anniversary of Stonewall, and I'm only guessing this, but somewhere I think along the line, we probably were having our celebrations near the end of June, but everyone was having their celebrations near the end of June. And ours got bumped to the beginning of June. Yeah. I don't know if because there was other things that are going on here, but my little brain wants to say it didn't want to interfere with other Pride celebrations around the world or, around the country. Though ours comes first.
Well, if you think about what happens right after our Pride Festival is the Arts Festival. It's like two Prides in 1 month.
maybe that was it, because I think there were some things that competed.
Yeah,
it was things that got on the way on our calendar, in our Utah calendar, and so things got moved around. And I think the Pride celebration kept getting moved around.
I don't remember that.
And I think it finally landed on the first Sunday of the month.
You were talking about the Utah AIDS Foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which has recently reincarnated itself as
I don't even know the new name of it.
It's a health clinic.
Yeah.
So it's more comprehensive, and it's addressing queer health.
Mm-hmm.
So I know they offer a lot of services for folks who need transgender health needs. So it's more than just HIV, AIDS prevention, but that's still a big part of it.
Right.
But think about, right, in 82, we became conscious of this thing.
Yes.
This thing was overtaking our community. Ronald Reagan was being very coy and quiet about it for many years at the cost of hundreds and thousands of lives.
Ronald Reagan was one of our presidents.
Yeah. Comparable to another one we're dealing with. Right, but he did not want to mention it.
No.
And so who stood up for us? First of all, our lesbian sisters became huge. Like, gay men were becoming sick and disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the lesbians in the community
they stepped up
and took care of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was organizations like, I believe, Queer Nation, Act Up, right? In the absence of the government taking any accountability or responsibility, it was those early activists that stood up and demanded that our voices be heard. So we had queer health organizations. We had activists like Larry Kramer. We had organizations like Act Up and Queer Nation.
Yes.
Right? Those people pioneered a voice then to save lives, but to demand research, to demand interventions.
Yep.
And so here we are in 2026, and I can get a diagnosis of HIV positive and be put on medication that will leave me undetectable and untransmittable, right? If I'm adhering to medical treatment.
Right.
And now we have PrEP, which can prevent the spread of or the contraction of.
Yeah.
I mean, things are happening in our health sphere today. I think I'm going to live long enough to see a cure for AIDS.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, there's already some research and data out there suggesting very strong promises in that regard.
Wow. Yeah.
All of that is on the back of those people who joined those organizations, that contributed to those organizations, that marched in parades, who participated in protests. Our ability to be healthier today is because of those people.
So true. And they have to be acknowledged. Yeah, because they risked their lives.
They gave their lives.
Gave their lives for, the existence and treatment and just common, health benefit of this community. And yeah, we owe our lives to these individuals and these groups, and as that evolved, I'm just thinking how, because I was a part of the Utah's HIV prevention program, where, because monies finally started getting funneled into the states for HIV prevention and treatment and all of that. And so each state had its own kind of organizational body that got to determine what smaller organizations within those counties and whatnot would get monies for treatment. I was a part of that in Utah here. That no longer exists now, but there is another kind of pioneering force that allowed things like, treatment on the spot, testing right away, treatment right away, preventive opportunities right away in all types of communities, whether you're men who had sex with men or injection drug users, etc. We were part of the group that helped funnel the monies for those organizations. We wouldn't have what we have today, people, without those early pioneers.
Well, and again, knowing the history, I'm going to toot my own horn for a minute, because when I started my practice, Pride Counseling, which was in the mid to late 90s, everyone told me that was professional suicide. And we had therapists in Salt Lake City who were gay or lesbian, who saw gay and lesbian clients. They were kind of like, you learned about them through word of mouth, but it's not like you could find them. If you were in the closet, it was kind of roulette. Who do I go and talk to? Is this therapist going to try to change me or support me, kind of a thing?
Right.
And so I started Pride Counseling. And at that time, there was me and 2 other therapists. And we eventually grew to like 7 therapists. I was working with students and had an APRN that was working. I mean, I had a full clinic.
That's right.
And it never was professional suicide. But it was interesting. People would start to hear about Pride Counseling and they would want to join my practice. But frequently they wouldn't join the practice because I was too visible. And they were afraid about the visibility. And now you can throw a rock and hit anyone in Salt Lake City that is out, gay, and doing therapy. But I would like to think, I got invited to every conference regionally and even nationally to talk about queer mental health in an affirming, positive way. And there would be, I can tell you how many times I would get up initially, and there was always a group they would find out where I was presenting. And they were therapists who were conservative or Mormon or whatever, but they did not like the idea that I was only presenting one side of the story.
Interesting.
Which was a gay affirmative side. And so they would literally heckle me or confront me or be angry in front of and I became really quick on my feet. It's a Sicilian gift. And then one time they set up this situation where they had asked me to speak, and then they said, well, we're going to have another speaker on. And this speaker was a known conversion therapist.
Oh, interesting.
And so I argued that she shouldn't be on this thing, but they wouldn't relent. And so we had a public debate, and it was kind of hairy.
Wow, I bet.
But I believe part of my bigger vision was, if I do this today, I can begin to normalize legitimate conversations about queer mental health. I can expose conversion therapy for, the snake oil that it is, and could potentially create a platform for queer therapists to feel some comfortability in being out and open. And I had a lot of students that would do practicums with me, and I would only work with gay students. That's not true. For a long time, I only worked with gay students, but then I started to open it up to allies. Yeah. And some of those allies were active Mormon therapists, and they got a big education.
Yes.
But what I know is they went out into their communities and places and infused a different way of looking at this subject. And maybe, it's like spitting in the ocean, but I really feel like I help to shape things in this community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's 100% truth. I mean, you are definitely a pioneer in this community because of the risk that you took. But it even sounds like it really wasn't risk. It was just something, no, this just needs to be done. And I that's the feeling I get. Yeah. And this will have a positive effect on our community. And I can just see those baby therapists, in the background or in the audience of those conferences, and just seeing how, oh my gosh, he's doing this. He's actually doing this. Yeah. And just getting inspired by that and seeing how this can work. And you just easily, like you said, kind of spit in the ocean, but man, even a spit in an ocean creates a ripple. And people following that and feeling confident enough to do that themselves.
There's a significant insurance company here in the state of Utah. And I remember they would not put me on their panel, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they would invite me to be on their panel, because I know sign language. They would invite me as a therapist who could work with the deaf. And I would counter and say, I will be a provider on the conditions that I'm also known on your network as working in an affirmative nature with gay and lesbian clients. They would not concede to that.
Interesting.
Then I found out that they were paying conversion therapists.
Wow.
So at this time, I had a network of therapists, affirmative therapists, through the Association of Social Workers. Yeah. And we took on a campaign to expose that insurance company for only supporting conversion therapists. Wow. And my argument was, you seek out Polynesian therapists, you seek out Latino therapists.
Absolutely.
You speak out for therapists who are culturally competent with Native clients, right? But we dared to take them on. And eventually, right, they actually denied that they paid for conversion therapists. And yet, when I showed the evidence that they did, and when we were going public, we were writing letters to the editor, which was a thing. We used to have newspapers. But we wrote letters to the editors. We contacted legislators. We created a lot of stink. And so they never stopped supporting conversion therapists, but guess who got on their panel? Yeah. And that opened the door for other providers who at that time were doing good work with queer folks. Yep. And so we created some equity there.
Yeah. And as you are coming in, with this congregation of, affirming therapists, it does start to mute and eventually kicks out the conversion therapy because knowing that it's not going to work, we're the more powerful voice here and can nudge that out. That's how things shift. That's how things move. It does start with a group, an individual, just having an idea and moving forward with it.
Well, and I think when we started Queer Spirit, and we've talked about that, right? Our voice 30 years ago was about, let's create this balanced nuance of gay men relating to each other.
Right.
And then eventually, right, we brought out Mindfully Gay. I think in many ways, we're pioneering dialogue and conversations. In fact, I think we had someone write to us saying it's refreshing to have a podcast that's talking about relevant topics beyond the surface, right? Like, we know how to give the political one-liners, but I think you and I are just having deep conversation. And then what I'm hearing anecdotally from those who listen to us is that sometimes what we're talking about in the podcast becomes that Sunday brunch conversation with our friends.
Yes.
And we don't always agree with you. And I'm like, congratulations.
That's great.
What?
Because you're having the conversation. And I love this, I love our evolution. And I do believe that we are pioneers. 30 some odd years ago, we started Queer Spirit. And I think one of the premises of that was to give, gay men another place to, like you said, to meet, because at that time it was just it was the bars. It was just the bars. Didn't have the internet. We didn't have phones and the grinder and all of that kind of stuff. That didn't exist back then. And it was the bars and kind of back rooms and alleys and things like that. It's like we can find healthy spaces or just alternative spaces in addition to those things, those areas where you can meet. That was our first premise. And to add this element, because I was a yogi, you're a budding shaman. Shamanette. And I was a yogiette, way back when. And so we offered those offerings, and it has evolved, and we've been able to evolve kind of with the times, with technology. With Queer Spirit, it was pretty much kind of a Salt Lake City thing, if not a couple of counties, Utah County, Salt Lake County, maybe Weber County, I don't know.
People knew about us through word of mouth.
Just word of mouth and just seeing us. But now, because of the internet and podcasting, and you even posted that question on TikTok, where are you listening to us from, and people are hearing us from all over the world.
and apparently prison too.
I mean, talk about a ripple effect, and spitting into the ocean. People are hearing this, and I think with the same idea as you did as a therapist, opening and running Pride Counseling. I'm going to put this out there, because this is going to be a ripple effect. I want others to be able to do this same thing. If you're a gay individual who does therapy and wants to work with gay clients, I'm going to help pave that path so it's safe for you to do that, and you feel okay and good about doing that, and people will gladly come see you. That's what you've done. And I think we're doing that with Mindfully Gay. We have our conversation. It's getting out there, and thank you for listening. And others are having their conversations about these various topics.
Well, and I think this is how I think about the podcast. We still have a hard time getting people to show up to things, which is fine. I'm just happy that people are listening and maybe going to the website and getting some inspiration. And somewhere these podcasts are being stored and saved somewhere. And who knows? Who knows, in 2050, somebody might find these podcasts. And it might be the missing link. It might be something that I just think, like, sometimes when I find a book or literature or something that was speaking to the gay community 50 years ago, for instance, I think, wow, Like I can be inspired by it because I find some sense of root, some connectedness.
Yes.
And I think the dialogue that we're having and sharing with people has the potential of fertilizing the future. It's interesting. Lately we've just been getting a lot of feedback from people, which it felt like it was never happening, and now suddenly we're getting a lot. And kind of the theme of those comments is, I feel isolated, and this helps me feel connected. This allows me to think about things that I've not considered. Right. Even Nick, when he was on the podcast, would often say, yes, I had no idea that these were even questions I should be asking.
Right.
And yet what he was saying is, wow, this edifies me in some way. So who knows? We may never experience the shade of the trees that we're planting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely what this ends up being is a time capsule, right?
Yeah.
And like you said,
that's a great analogy.
Somewhere down the line, someone may discover this and fill in the gaps and connect the dots, because maybe, 2050, 2060, a lot of things got lost or, became illegal or whatever. It just wasn't available to them. And especially in regards to gay history and where they came from and their pioneers. But maybe we might be a link to helping them rediscover, some of these individuals and how we got here. How did Pride start, and how did Queer Spirit start, and mindfulness and all these things.
And when someone does a retreat and does an ancestor altar, I better have my fat ass on there.
It'll be up there.
I want my own candle.
There was this guy named Jeremiah Bootsy, and
they always fuck up my name.
Yeah, your face will be up there on those altars.
So I think a question, I'm just kind of looking at the time here. I think a good question, maybe a question to ask the readers, right? We started out kind of talking about history, how history, became fertilizer for what we have today. What's happening today becomes fertilizer for tomorrow. We've talked about kind of these national figures that stand out as kind of gay folk heroes, if you will. People that will always be etched into our history. Yeah. We've talked about small ways that we've contributed. I guess my question to the listeners is, in what ways might you consider yourself a pioneer? Like, what are you doing in your life that may seem innovative, that may seem to be new ground or territory?
I think that's, I want to jump in because I think that's a wonderful question, and I would add to that. Don't think that it has to be something big or grand. Like I cured cancer. It doesn't have to be something astronomical, because it might be just the simplest thing.
Well, think about the campaign of the 90s and the early 2000s, and it basically was to come out. That coming out was a political action.
Yeah.
Because we needed to be counted. We needed to be seen.
Yeah.
I'm so over the Pride festivals. I've been doing Pride festivals for about 100 years now, but I show up every year because I am a number. I am adding to the volume of people who are daring to show up, be counted.
Love that.
So that politicians kind of scratch their heads saying, I better be in that parade next year because that vote is relevant.
Yeah, love that.
And those voices, I want the 50,000 people showing up at this event to be against me or for me politically.
Hello.
So remember, coming out. And I'm thinking about some of the people we've heard from outside of the United States who are coming from these repressive countries. Yeah. And I'm going to tell people, think about your decisions to do whatever you do. But part of the root process here in this country was to find safety in coming out. Yeah. And to find community in coming out. And So that could be an interesting, for some people, like this guy in Africa, that could be a huge pioneering moment.
Yes. I think that's so remarkable, because even if you don't, come out in a grand style, coming out to yourself is a huge piece of being a pioneer, because you are freeing yourself from a bond or a bind, an obstacle that doesn't even allow you to truly be yourself. And even if you tell one or two people, that can be revolutionary as well, because you might be educating someone about just humanity and openness and equity and those kinds of things, just because you just told somebody your truth and who you are.
Well, the history of Harry Hayes and the Manishing, it wasn't like Harry was active in community stuff, not as a gay man. It wasn't safe, but he found other men and said, come to my home. And they would close the curtains.
Yeah.
They would create, right? Nobody knew what was happening. And he wasn't out until later in his life.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I get chills, because it is things like that. It might be the thing you're not really. It's probably not the obvious thing that makes you a pioneer. It's something that you do or say or don't say to an individual.
Well, if you think about when we've talked about porn, right? And people compare themselves to a porn star, and it's like, well, the reason people do porn is right, they represent the extraordinary in some way, and we somehow glamorize that. And then we think we have to kind of somehow compare to that. And I think we might even do that in our activist circles, right? Oh, we're going to let that organization or that executive director take charge. Me, whether I show up or not show up, isn't relevant, right? And we have to remember that I still hold on to this adage that living unapologetically and openly is a statement.
It's a statement. It is it's a grand statement. That's why I mean by being simple. It may not be, the grand gesture, but it might be something simple that you just do every day. that is that sense of being a pioneer, not only for yourself but for your community.
Yeah, and you never know who's watching.
That's the thing. Yeah, who's watching, who's listening. That's why I say sometimes it could be about what you say, but it might be what you don't say. If there's something, because there were some people when I was coming out in college, and when I came out, and people were saying, "Oh, well, that's why." They were kind of putting the puzzle pieces together. And there was one woman, I remember, it was actually my roommate's girlfriend. And she goes, I kind of had a thought, I had a feeling that you might be gay. And I said, well, what was it what gave it away? It was like, it was the things you didn't talk about.
Well, that meant you had manners.
Well, that might have been the difference. I mean, that might have been, the gesture that gave me away, or but I think that says something. I think that does say something. That we're willing to take a risk of not trying to just fit in, but being true to yourself, and that might mean I don't believe those things, so I'm not going to say those things.
Yeah. So I think July 24th, we take on the true spirit of Pioneer Day. And whether you're in the parade or not, put on your bonnet, push your handcart down the street and celebrate Pride Day, or Pioneer Day, as if it were Pride Day.
You can wave a little rainbow flag.
Because I don't know of a gay or transgender or lesbian person that isn't a pioneer today.
Yeah.
And
love that.
A good example is when you and I were coming out, the average age of coming out was like mid-20s.
Yeah.
And now kids at the time of puberty are starting to recognize and acknowledge. And the only reason they're able to do that is because they are surrounded by healthy examples around them of gay and lesbian people and trans people who are living unapologetically, who dare to come out, who live their lives unapologetically. And these kids are starting to recognize that. And I think developmentally for me, I wish I could have come out when I recognized those attractions. And yet my reaction was complete paralyzing fear.
Yeah, same.
Because at that time, the stories were freaks in the streets or people being killed.
Yeah. Yep.
Or dying of a disease.
Dying of a disease, yeah. But you're right. You know, the young people are now surrounded by so many ways of seeing the positive, affirming aspects of our growing community, right? That, yeah, we are, you know, the numbers are astounding. We are out there. Our voices are loud. And if you want to be, and you can certainly be a part of that loud voice just by showing up. By showing up.
So, happy Pioneer Day, wherever you are in the world. We want to thank you for joining us on Mindfully Gay today. You can find our website at mindfullygay.com. You can find us on TikTok on Mindfully Gay, Facebook on Mindfully Gay, Instagram mindfully_gay. John here lives in Salt Lake City. No.
My address is, my phone number is, the platforms that I use are.
His Grindr page. But thank you for joining us. We look forward to hearing your stories about how you pioneer your existence. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We hope today's conversation reminds you that every generation builds upon the courage of those who came before us, and that your story may become part of someone else's journey in the future.
We'd love to hear from you. What part of LGBTQ plus history has inspired you the most? Share your thoughts and stories with us on Instagram at mindfully_gay, or join the conversation on TikTok at mindfullygay.
You can also visit mindfullygay.com for more information about us and our mission.
If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to rate and review the Mindfully Gay podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your ratings help more people discover these conversations and strengthen our growing community.
Thank you for listening.
Until next time, take good care of yourself and each other.